Hello, how you going?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
So we're going to talk about your assessment of a counselling skills role play. All right.
Yes,
Cool.
yes, yeah.
So thank you
So,
for sending me documents. That's super helpful.
yeah.
I'm really curious to know throughout this assessment, what assessment methods did you use?
Yeah, okay, all right. Um, well, maybe just before I go into that, I'll just tell you a little bit about me and how my role fits into this assessment that we're talking about. Um, so I'm a full-time teacher on the Diploma of Counselling, and I've been teaching full-time now for 4 years, both in teaching and assessing. So, and I've been on the Diploma of Counselling for 3 years. So, yeah. So
Awesome.
just how that ties in, yeah.
I missed that
Um,
first bit. Sorry. I think I need to state who I am too. So I'm Carly,
yeah,
and I'm also a teacher on the Diploma of Counselling. Have been here for a year now, full time, and we're both studying the Diploma of
yeah,
Vet, which is
that's
cool.
it. Yeah, that's it. Um, yeah. So, sorry, go back to the other. What was your first question?
Well, I think I
Forgot.
need to do another question first, and that is to
Ah,
confirm
okay.
that you've been involved in the assessment of 10 candidates enrolled in a vet program.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been teaching for 4 years, which like at a full-time program. So it means I've been teaching approximately 20 hours a week in a teacher role, and part of that is assessing all types of different assessments in the Diploma of Counselling, anything
Mm,
from role play assessments to looking at written assessments as well. So yeah, a vast
awesome.
kind of range of different assessment types. Yeah.
Full spread. And so, with this assessment in particular, so the counselling skills role play assessment, what
Mm.
methods did you use?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we use predominantly um, the student needs to demonstrate certain counselling skills and or therapies. And so what we use is a number of things. So we use, first of all, the platform that they use to demonstrate these skills is on Microsoft Teams, where we set up a counselling role play schedule, and then we obviously use Microsoft Teams for them to use the rooms to demonstrate this. Yeah, and for us to assess in real time. So we have a bunch of assessors, and we have groups of students that are paired with one another. And in this pairing, one's a student counsellor and the other one is a student client. And they demonstrate skill, and they swap roles, and there's an assessor that's assessing them at real time. Does that answer that question? Yeah. So there's a
Yeah.
lot involved that goes into preparing the role play assessment schedules. Um, it's around, obviously, it's done in class time, so allocated. Um, so, for example, if we run the counselling skills unit on a Tuesday, what we do is we run the assessment schedule within the class time on the same day and the same day, same time. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, cool.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
when you say assessing, is that observing?
Yeah, so we use a formal feedback form, which is the marking criteria, and all the elements that are linked to that unit of competency is listed on this feedback form. And when we're assessing the demonstration of this skill set, we make comments as we observe them being demonstrated from the student counsellor. Yeah,
Yeah, cool. Okay.
yeah,
And for this particular learner, it sounds like you do it with lots of different learners. Um,
yeah.
was there any special considerations you made for this particular person?
Yeah, so this particular student that I've been assessing, um, what happened was she has a reasonable adjustment plan just because of the cultural and linguistic diverse needs of this student, but also her mental health needs as well. So what we decided to do is she wasn't able to pass her first role play demonstration. And so I, in consultation with the first assessor and also the lead teacher of the course, which is yourself, we agreed that part of her reasonable adjustment plan and being fair would to give her an opportunity to demonstrate this role play again. But because of the limitation in resources in terms of teacher availability, what I asked her to do was to arrange the role play with someone else and then record it, and then I would observe it and mark it accordingly. And then she was to conduct it over 3 sessions. So she really has to do her client one role play again. And so with particular students with particular learning needs, we always tend to bring these particular students back to our team meetings and have a bit of discussion, and often, if not all the time, I'll share my observations with a teacher, just to make sure that the way that I've assessed this student is fair, and it's in alignment with all the elements, and that I'm not being biased in any way towards this student. I think that's come up for me a bit during these interviews, is that how bias of if you've got a relationship with that student because you're teaching them, you're seeing them in class, how that bias can come in and maybe have an impact on how you assess. So just being authentic and transparent, I think, is really important around these issues.
Yeah, and sounds really responsive and proactive as well, I guess, in terms of their discussions and how you plan for that. That kind of
Yeah,
leads on to
definitely.
sorry, I was going to say that kind of leads on to the next question, in what you're talking about, in that when you're planning this assessment, what other factors do you take into account?
So I guess so what did I say before? Student availability, where they're at with their skill set, identifying some of the barriers in terms of even like digital literacy we take into consideration as well. If English is a second language, then that again, sometimes in these cases, sometimes we might need to conduct a professional conversation to help with having conversations around big concepts for these role play assessments. What else? I think duty of care comes into play as well when we're thinking about these assessments. So making sure that we're pairing people that are at similar levels with their skill set, or being aware of dynamics on personality kind of clashes. I think they're things that we think about as well. I think I've covered it. I might be missing something, but
Sounds comprehensive. Yeah. And you mentioned that you write on a feedback form. How do you give feedback? How does the student receive that?
Yeah. So at the end of their demonstration, which usually goes for 20 minutes, we allow for 5 minutes where we give them real-time verbal feedback. So after they've demonstrated, the student client will leave and then we'll give them some verbal feedback, really highlighting some of the key areas that they really excelled in and maybe an area for improvement, and then finishing it off with, some really strength-based feedback there just to help with improving confidence. And then what I do is I write, so all the verbal feedback that I give is generally from the written feedback that I've typed as I've assessed.
Mm.
and then I will email that to the student at the end of the day, so they've got that written feedback then to take on board to help them prepare for their following session. So yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good.
Mm.
You mentioned with this particular student, the whose form you sent me, they were recording their role play, so it was a kind of a second turn at doing it. Did you give feedback a different way for that learner?
Um, well, because it was a recorded session, um, what I did was I emailed the student to let them know that I had observed their recorded demonstration. Here was the written feedback, and to make a time for us to go through it together and
Mm.
provide some verbal feedback. I also connected with her learner support teacher, and I included them into that process as well. So if anything came up in between, um, that type of work that we had done together, or there was still area of concern, she could take it back to her learner support teacher and they could also go through it together. So
Mm.
I think the learner support teacher being part of that, I think was really helpful in terms of consistency and also, keeping that teacher in the loop, I think was really helpful for the student. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like even though the assessment was done a little bit differently to normal, you still made that time to have that face-to-face, online face-to-face discussion about, um, yeah, about their
Yeah.
performance and how you can support them to continue learning and growing.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think it's about being transparent and getting other teachers' input as well. So even from a learner support teacher input, I think it really helps me to go, oh yeah, okay, I am seeing this in a fair way, and yeah, and going from
Mm.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm.
Uh, and from a professional standpoint for you, um, do you think there were any barriers that you faced in fulfilling your role? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Well, I think the barrier for me was just being time poor, and I think the student would have preferred that I be available for them in real time to do this additional role play assessment. But I felt like the recorded session actually probably was a better alternative. I think it helped the student to feel a lot less intimidated by the presence of being an assessor there. So helped reduce the anxiety. So I think that was the barrier. Um, and also the students' comprehension of the feedback and understanding and how they interpret what I'm saying. Um, that's been a barrier too. So again, making sure that the learner support teacher is part of that process to help kind of fill in any gaps of where there could have been some misunderstanding in the feedback, either being given verbally or written feedback as well. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like you've been really well thought out in how you approach this assessment and made it really adaptable to this learner's needs. Um, it sounds like it's a really big assessment for lots of different students. So being able to handle it
Mm,
across the cohort, but then for individual students who need more support based on their RAP or based on their health needs, yeah, I think is really inclusive and really reflexive and shows a lot
mm.
of thinking on your behalf.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know what if that's the right way, sometimes it's a bit of a dance, isn't it? Like, so that's
Yeah.
why I think it's really important to collaborate with other teacher and assessors just to make sure that how you are approaching this particular situation with this student is on track. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like a dance and
Yeah.
sounds really reflective, like something you've done and you've thought about, gone to your team and discussed, and then kind of figured out how we either keep doing this well or what do we need to change in order to make sure that we maintain that currency or make sure it meets the needs of the learner, but also of the elements that we're assessing as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, thanks for
very
that.
professional.
Thank you very
Hmm.
much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think that's it from me. Do you have any questions or comments to make for me, or is that?
Um, can't really think. Yeah. Are we?
Mm.
Hmm. I guess would you have if you had this student and you were assessing her role plays, would you have done it any differently? What was there any area that you would have thought, oh, maybe we should try this or
Um, no, I think you've handled it beautifully. I think you've handled it exactly how I would have done that in terms of
Mm,
um, noticing the extra support this student required, giving extra opportunity and scaffolding that so they
mm,
can engage the
mm.
assessment in a way um, that is appropriate for them. And again,
Yeah,
including that support network, which is really important for
yeah.
them.
Mm. Okay, good to
Yeah.
know. All right. Thanks for
So,
sharing that. Appreciate
thanks,
that.
Mel. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Carly.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.